This is War Documented, and today we tell the story of the POW who thanked his guard. I still remember the morning the trucks came. Gray light. The kind that makes the world look unfinished. They rolled through the camp gates with a low rumble, trailing the smell of diesel and coal dust. We had spent months guarding men who once tried to kill us, though by then most of us didn't think in those terms anymore. The war was ending. The shouting had quieted across oceans. But here, inside the wire, you could still feel the hum of fear. One of them was Hans Adler. He wasn't tall or broad like the posters made them out to be. Just a young man with tired eyes and a way of folding his hands when he stood, as if he was always half praying. In those first weeks, the camp lived on the edge of silence. We guards spoke little. The prisoners spoke less. Every sound carried. The scrape of a metal tray, the rattle of boots on gravel, the wind sliding through the barbed wire. At night, I'd walk the perimeter and listen. Sometimes they sang under their breath, rough voices tangled in languages I didn't understand. Other times, the only sound was coughing. It reminded me that war didn't end for everyone on the same day. One evening, as the sun burned out behind the pines, I saw Hans sitting alone near the fence, a scrap of paper in his hand. He wasn't reading it, just staring. Winter softened, and with it, so did the air between us. The men grew thinner, but they also grew less afraid. They began to nod to us at morning roll call. Small gestures, like pebbles tossed into deep water. I noticed the contradictions first. A guard sharing tobacco through the wire. A prisoner offering half his bread to another man who could barely stand. One afternoon, I walked past the workshop where the prisoners repaired tools. Inside, someone was humming. It wasn't a marching song. It was something gentler, almost like a lullaby. That night, when I made my rounds, I found Hans again. He stood near the fence, looking at the stars. "Cold night," I said. He hesitated, then answered in broken English. "Better than yesterday." He told me he had been a teacher before the war. I told him I'd wanted to be one after. Sometimes I'd catch myself listening for his accent, the rhythm of it. Spring brought rumors. Some prisoners would soon be repatriated. The men grew restless, half hopeful, half terrified of what waited back home. Hans started keeping a small notebook. He'd write in it whenever he could, sitting by the fence as sunlight fell over the yard. "What do you write about?" I asked. He looked up slowly. "My students," he said, "so I don't forget their names." When I passed Hans, I saw him shivering despite the mild air. I reached into my coat and handed him a pair of wool gloves. He stared at them, confused. "For the cold nights," I said. After that, he began speaking more. He told me about his brother who hadn't made it back from Stalingrad, about the schoolhouse near Bremen that he hoped still stood. And I told him about the farm I'd left behind in Kansas. One evening, he handed me a folded page. "Please," he said, "read later." That night, under the weak light of the guard hut, I opened it. It wasn't a confession or a plea, just a poem. The last line read, "If men build them with hands, maybe hearts can cross too." By early summer, the orders came. A transport list. Names to be released and sent home. Hans Adler was on it. He turned to me. "For many months I was prisoner, but you treated me as man." He reached out his hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "Before I go free, thank you." As he climbed aboard, he turned once more. Our eyes met, a second long enough to carry everything we couldn't say. The gate creaked open again months later, this time for me. The war was long over. I went home to Kansas, to fields that hadn't changed. I kept Hans's poem tucked in my uniform pocket until the cloth wore thin. I never heard from him again. Sometimes, when I told my son bedtime stories, I'd change the names, soften the edges, but the truth stayed the same. And though the years have tried to fade it, I can still see him, standing at that gate, sunlight breaking behind him, saying thank you not for mercy, but for memory. Because in the end, that's what survives. Not the wire, not the orders. Just the moment when one man looked at another and saw something human again. History doesn't whisper. It echoes. This is War Documented. Subscribe to keep those echoes alive.